समाज जीवन में भी श्रम की प्रतिष्ठा, श्रमिक की प्रतिष्ठा, श्रमयोगी का गौरव, ये हम सबकी सामूहिक जिम्मेवारी भी है और व्यवस्थाओं में परिवर्तन करने की आवश्यकता भी है। आखिरकार मेक इन इंडिया को सफल करना है तो ईज ऑफ बिजनेस इस सबसे पहली रिक्वायरमेंट है।
Good morning, sir, and good morning to Section 5. It feels great to be wearing formals after so many days and to be able to present in front of you. So our topic is emerging issues in labor laws. So this topic is very important as we all are going to start our career in the industry for the coming year. It is very important for all of us to know about the current labor laws that are there. First of all, we have to know that what is the condition of laborers in India. In India, we have already seen due to the virus and the pandemic how migrant laborers are going back to their respective state. We have also seen the GDP has gone down below, unemployment has raised, and that has posed some serious question about the economic development. If we look at this map, we can clearly see that the red color indicates the places where labor rights are denied. So India is definitely one of those countries where labor laws are denied. So India has been talking about amendment and reforms in those labor laws for a very long time. The reason being we need to employ more people and we need to encourage the ease of doing business and make in India. India has 20 central laws and 200 state laws. The government is trying to codify those laws into 4 categories: industrial relation, wages, social security and welfare. International Labour Organization clearly says that we have to discuss with all the stakeholders before making any law. The central government needs to talk with the state government and also the labor union before making any reform. But the trend, the current scenario is the state government is making their own decisions without consulting anyone, and that is impacting the laborers. I would give you an example. Ambassador and Toyota started producing at the same time. Ambassador sells 18,000 cars per year and Toyota sells 5 million cars per year. Now the question is, are labor reforms the only reason why businesses have not been able to do well, why we have been unable to attract foreign investment? A study from KPMG and CII says that labor reforms are not even a reason why we have been unable to encourage business. The reasons are land acquisition, permits, and getting electricity and water connection. So, whether these reforms will actually bring in economic development is a talking point as well. 90% of the labor force are working in the unorganized sector, and it's very difficult for them to implement these laws. We see contractors taking commission from the labor's wage as well. So these laws are not being implemented at all in various sectors, various industries. So it remains to be a talking point whether these reforms or the changes in these laws will do anything when it comes to economic development and economic growth. My friends is going to talk more on this topic. Do put your comments down below and let us know how we are doing. It is very valuable for all of us. Thank you.
Good morning everyone, my name is Abhishek Shom and today we are going to talk about two major labor laws in India out of the many labor laws in India. So let us talk about the two labor laws. The first is the Industrial Dispute Act 1947. The second is the Contract Labor Regulation and Abolition Act 1970. So let us talk about the Industrial Dispute Act 1947. So as you all know, the signature image of the lockdown has been the millions of ragged people stranded in the highways. So what made these migrants long for the village, the very place they were ready to leave for work just a short time ago? So one of the reasons is obviously COVID-19. Another reason lies in the Industrial Dispute Act 1947, which has encouraged short-term employment, low skills and zero security. So the Industrial Dispute Act was enacted in 1947. The main objective of the Industrial Dispute Act was to secure the industrial peace and to enrich the conditions of the workmen in industry. Now let us look at the problems in the Industrial Dispute Act 1947. So the first problem is that if a company hires more than 99 workers, then the company has to notify the government in case they want to fire any one of the workers. The second problem is that if a company hires more than 20 workers, the company has to ensure provident fund commitments and bonus payments. The third problem is that workers employed for more than 240 days has to be given severance pay. We have seen the problems in the Industrial Dispute Act. Now let us look at the impact of the Industrial Dispute Act 1947. The first point is that it has led to increase in the informal sector. Second point, it has led to increase in contractual work. The third point is that companies now don't want to grow big but prefer to stay as an MSME. The fourth point, even the formal companies, they are now are starting to outsource from the informal ones as a result of this act. As we have learned that the Industrial Dispute Act has led to increase in contractual labor. So keeping that in mind, let us now look at the Contract Labor Regulation and Abolition Act 1970. So the Contract Labor Regulation and Abolition Act was enacted in 1970 as a central law, and it had two objectives. The first is to regulate the conditions under which the contractual labor work, and the second is the gradual abolition of the contractual labor system as and when possible. Now let us look at the current issues surrounding the Contract Labor Regulation and Abolition Act 1970. The first problem is that this act lacks a certain degree of clarity in terms of abolition of contractual labor. There is no specific mention of the status of the worker in terms upon abolishment of contractual labor. The current stand of court is that the right to terminate or absolve is that of the employer, but there is no clarity on that yet. The second point is that there are a large number of enterprises who employ contractual labor but are not registered under the Act. So there is a failure on the implementation of the Act on such enterprises. Such problem should be kept in mind when enacting the new labor reforms. Thank you.
Thank you, Abhishek. Now we can say that the Indian reforms are characterized by the adoption of a range of flexible labor market practices that weaken and undermine unions, remove regulatory burden on harmful businesses conduct, disempower the individual worker, and weaken social cohesion and mutual responsibility at the workplace. Sticking to the point, I shall talk of two relevant bills, I should say. The first one is the labor bill on social security and welfare. The second is the labor code on wages. Coming to the first labor code, which is comprised of 13 labor laws pertaining to social security and welfare, that is the Compensation Act, Building and Other Construction Workers Welfare Act, Maternity Act, Gratuity Act, Provident Fund Act, etc. We shall understand what does this code actually mean to say. Now, under this code, the government has included many issues, arbitrarily including the provision to deduct 1% to 2% cess to go towards the charges. The coverage of the unorganized or the informal sector, and the criteria for the nomination of the member of the National Social Security Board. Now, in accordance to the international labor law, we recall that the government has to go for taking in the directions or the advices from the representatives of laborers and workers, since they are both the contributors as well as the beneficiaries. So the ILO believes that the social security is always interwoven with the fundamental principles and rights at work. Now, this means that the workers organization have the right to participate in the effective functioning of the social security institutions, including participation in its governing bodies without any dependence from other bodies. They are to be autonomous and free in every aspect. Now, the compliance lies with the inspector, who ensures that the international labor standards are to be followed highly and duly. Now, it's very much unfortunate for us all that the government has gone for a labor facilitator instead of a labor inspectors, labor enforcement officer, and conciliation officer. Now, we have to understand what is the role of a facilitator here. The facilitator is the one whom the laborers are to complain on the functioning of the system. But now, this undermines the Convention 81 laid down by International Labour Organization, which the government has to comply. Provisions are made for the workers to go for and seek help from different kind of voluntary organization and various NGOs, but not trade unions, which is very much surprising here. If this is going to stand still, or if it's allowed to go through, it went through actually. Several kind of anti-union discrimination will come up, which is coming up now. The worker who is working there will not be able to complain to the union itself, which is kind of derogatory in nature. I mean, uh, you cannot complain something which is going on to the members who are selected for compliancing or looking or who are responsible for looking into those matter itself. Now how harsh is this? Now secondly, we shall come on to the labor code on wages, which consolidates four central labor laws such as the Payment of Wages Act, the Minimum Wages Act of 1948, Payment of Bonus Act, and Equal Remuneration Act of 1976. Now this code brings in the difference between employees and workers. Here it categorizes the supervisory, managerial, and administrative staff as employees, and skilled, semi-skilled, unskilled, manual, operational, technical, and clerical as workers. Now, the risk is here is to create different categories of workers, to which basic standards of protection will be applied totally differently. For example, the workers by this definition will be more vulnerable and exposed to the situations which will come under the precarious environment of Indian contracts bill. Codes also comes up with the conditions of eligibility and the payment of bonuses, as well as disclosure to of relevant information to the workers and the organization. Now this code actually permits the setting up of minimum wages at different levels, such as at the central level, at the state level, at the regional level, at sector level, at industry level. By an example, we can understand this. Consider a man working in Imphal, there in Manipur. It is not guaranteed that the minimum wage set there will be equal to the minimum wage set there in Mumbai, there in Maharashtra, or in Kolkata, there in West Bengal, or there in Delhi, or there in Chennai. I mean, it's one country, and there should be a standard which all the states have to follow. By giving out the same number of hours, by working for the same number of hours, you should get a minimum wage which is equal throughout the country. Also, the code says that this particular code will be reviewed. I mean, the minimum wages code will be reviewed after every 5 years, but there is no provision to review it in this due term. Umair will be taking you after this, and he will be recommending and drawing out some conclusion after thoroughly reading all these points.
Good morning, everyone. I am Mohammad Umar Nomani, AP 19623, and I will be explaining the findings, conclusion, and the recommendation part of this report. After reviewing multiple pieces of literature and interpreting the Shashi Tharu level of English, we realize how fortunate and privileged we are, and how unfortunate and unprivileged the working class is. We found many irregularities in the current dilution by the government. However, I will be explaining a couple of them to save time in this video. The government's reason behind this dilution is to encourage investment, and this encouragement is done by changing the laws in such a way that the cost of labor is reduced. Now, you must be thinking that the cost of labor would have been so much that the government has to bring changes in it in order to encourage investment. But let me give you an example. China is the number one country in manufacturing and has a rate of $3.52 per hour, whereas in India it is only $0.92 per hour. And you can see the cost of labor is already very less in India compared to others. And according to the annual survey of industry data, the percentage share of labor wages in setting up an industry has reduced from 28% in 1980-81 to 12% in 2015 and 16. If the cost of laborers matters so less in setting up an industry, then how is the government going to encourage investment? Here, the main hesitation for investment is not the labor cost, but it is the compliance cost. The compliance cost consists of all the licenses and permits required to set up a factory. And the process of getting all these permits and licenses is filled with so much corruption and red tapeism that the investors are hesitant into getting the market. So here you can see the main culprit of less investment in the market is not due to the labor cost but due to the compliance cost. There is a common argument regarding the complexity of the labor laws, and to counter that, the government has simplified the law in such a way that it has made the law cripple. For example, Section 2 of the Factories Act states who is a worker and who is an employer. Now, guess what did the government do? The government removed this section under the guise of simplification. And imagine now, in case of an accident, a factory owner can easily deny the workers' compensation just by stating that the specific individual was not a worker in the first place. Another example of such simplification is the removal of Section 62 from the Factories Act. Section 62 deals with the maintenance of a register for all the workers working on the shop floor. Now, how or rather why would a factory owner keep proper track of working hours of the laborers when there is no law enforcing him to do so? Speaking of working hours, the government has increased the working time from 9 hours to 12 hours. Now, how will this affect the workers' wages? As per the earlier regulations, a worker could work 48 hours per week, but in reality, on an average, a worker works 60 hours per week. So earlier he used to get 12 hours of overtime. But if you take the new regulation of 12 hours, the worker will be working more than the average and earning only the basic amount. Group I by no means is any policy maker. However, we would like to give some recommendations from our side. Earlier I had mentioned corruption related to the compliance cost. Now that is a very tough thing to change. However, what we can do is reduce the time for compliance by hiring more employees. For example, in Bihar in 2013, for one inspector, there were 1060 factories. Now, this is a clear case of understaffing. So, we recommend to hire more employees in order to reduce the burden on the existing officers. We found out that policies made by the center are often not followed by the states, and policies made by the center or states sometimes dissatisfies the trade unions. So our second recommendation would be the solution given by the International Labour Organization, where they state that the policies should be made by consulting all these three parties. Recently, the government had issued an anti-union proposal regarding the right to strike and formation of unions. Our third recommendation would be withdrawal of this proposal, as it would only increase distrust among the workers and reduce the morale. Now, what's the use of all these changes if the worker is not raising his voice in the time of need, either because he's afraid of losing his job or is unaware of the laws? So, our last recommendation would be a better communication system and awareness through education. So, to conclude this video, after understanding all these changes, you can see that these are well thought out loopholes in order to prevent the firm owners from any liabilities. And the rate at which the government is diluting these laws, one can only think that this is just a footnote for something very large coming up. Thank you.
श्रम कानून बदल देने से देश में बिजनेस बढ़ जाएगा तो मुगालते में है, गलतफहमी में सरकार। मैंने कहा कि कोई भी नहीं कह रहा कि केवल लेबर कानूनों के कारण बिजनेस बढ़ने में दिक्कत, उसके कारण और है, मैंने आपको बताया। तो अगर उसको समझे बगैर सरकार कार्रवाई करेगी तो अनरेस्ट आएगी, अशांति फैलेगी, सड़कों पर झगड़ा खड़ा होगा और झगड़े में कोई पैसा नहीं लगा।